Ha ha ha.
Are we live?
We're live.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and roll into the intro?
Yeah. So, welcome to a special live episode of the Grounded in Simplicity podcast, where we are helping moms get back to basics and learn to find joy in being less busy. I'm Danielle from the Rustic Elk, joined by my good friend Bonnie of the Not So Modern Housewife. And today we are joining my Homestead Anywhere challenge and talking a little more about goal setting and creating visions for your homestead.
Yay. Just a quick housekeeping note for those of you joining us from Facebook. And I'll go ahead and put this link up here. Just need you to hop on over to StreamYard.com/Facebook so that it authorizes StreamYard to show us who is commenting. And if you guys have any questions for us or comments as we're going, we can actually put those up here on the screen and answer your questions. So goal setting.
Yeah. So I went live earlier. For those of you in my group who didn't know, I have actually never gone live other than with Bonnie a few times. So that was nerve-wracking. So do it scared, including homesteading. And so we're going to talk about finding your why. Bonnie, you want to lead a little bit on?
Find my why. We were kind of joking about like having mission statements, which we'll talk more about mission statements. I can't decide if mine is don't kill all the animals or like retain as much of my sanity as possible. But no, I would say my biggest why is when I first started this journey and I was still working full time, I actually had one of my coworkers, that when I was talking about gardening and having chickens, he was like, people still do that. And then I think this is around the same time that study came out that showed that like the majority of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. So I was just like, there is no way that I'm going to raise my children not knowing where their food comes from.
Right.
And so they are really my biggest why is, wanting to have them connected to their food supply, but also just, raising kids around animals is so beneficial for them, teaches them responsibility, teaches them empathy. And plus, like, it really, I feel, contributes to reducing food waste because, when it had a face, when you raised it, when you put in all of that work, you don't want to just throw that away because now you're wasting all of that time and effort, plus, that animal's life that contributed towards that meal.
Right. I talked about my why. So earlier when we moved to the city for the first time, we grew up in the city, but our entire marriage, we lived in the country. And then we moved to the suburbs when my middle daughter was just barely a year old. And it was like a culture shock, which was kind of strange since I'd grown up in the city, but realized very quickly that was a huge, huge mistake. Probably shouldn't have done it, but it took a while for us to get back in the country, and then we were only able to get an acre. But my why was, trying to get back to that grounded and purposeful feeling that we had when I lived in the country, even though we weren't really homesteading at that time. It was just, life is different when you live in the country and when you live in the city. And I guess I didn't realize the transition that I made when we moved to the country, but I definitely realized it when we moved back to the city. And it made me, I don't know, it's that whole, you don't know what you've got till it's gone type of thing, I guess. And so my why was definitely trying to find that purpose and that grounded feeling that I had when I lived in the country. And of course, like you, letting my kids know where their food came from was incredibly important. And now with the pandemic and everything going on in the world, it's definitely, food security and making sure that we know how to do things so that we have that security.
Yeah. Well, and plus, you mentioned you grew up in the city. I grew up in the country. I grew up in farm country, and we were surrounded by cornfields and commercial pig farms. Um, and a lot of my memories growing up revolved around the garden. And so I wanted to give my kids those same memories, but also there was such a huge part of it realizing once I started, doing it on my own that um, there was a big difference between how I wanted to do things and how I felt was, I don't know, more eco-friendly or really kind of focusing on like taking care of the earth versus what I grew up around with commercial practices and large scale farming. And I will say I've butted heads with my family members quite a bit because um, I've decided that I don't want to do things the same way that I grew up doing them. And, they see that kind of as a, I don't know, almost like an insult, like their way isn't good enough. But I think that, we're a little more educated. I mean, here we are 30 odd years later, because I'm not going to reveal too much about my age. And so, a lot of things we grew up doing and grew up around, we're realizing, maybe Frosted Flakes and Lucky Charms for breakfast isn't the best option.
Yeah, maybe not. But sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that my kids don't eat sugar, because we all know that's a lie.
So you got our notes?
We have notes.
Yeah. We're professionals at this. We are professionals.
All right, so yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're talking about our why. I guess, do you want to talk about why having a why is so important, or do you want me to cover that?
So I talked about it a little bit in my challenge group, about why you need to have a why. It helps you have purpose. And, when you think that you're ready to throw in the towel, you're not so likely to throw in the towel when you can go back and say, oh, but I'm doing this because I found in homesteading, you will often ask yourself why you were so crazy. Why am I doing this? And then you can go back to that sheet of paper that you pulled out and you wrote your why on.
Right.
And remind yourself over and over and over, there is a method to the madness, and there's definitely a reason. So I think if you don't figure out why you're doing what you're doing, then you're going to ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And if you don't know that reason, then you're likely to, throw in the towel, because it's a lot easier to give up when you don't have a purpose or something that you're trying to fulfill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, like, I've experienced that, and really with any type of goal setting or really pushing yourself to be a better person or improve whatever, a lot of times we're like, oh, well, you got to follow your heart and you got to do what motivates you, what drives you. The problem is you're going to wake up one day and you're not going to be motivated, and it's going to be like, this sucks. And that's when you need that why, because if you just let those downer moments and those times when you're not feeling motivated tell you that, oh, well, it's just not meant to be, or, oh, well, this door is closed, then that's when you're going to give up. And just because it's crappy sometimes, and it's going to be crappy a lot of the time, especially in the spring when everything is mud. But
I don't want to go outside right now.
it's gonna, but if you know why you're doing this, if and you're gonna have to remind yourself and be like, oh yeah, that's why I decided to take this on.
Sometimes by the minute.
Right. When I'm getting text messages from Danielle, like, I'm selling everything.
We're moving back to the city.
Yeah. And my husband's the one that he's like, that's it, I'm done, I'm moving to a condo. I'm like, you have fun with that. Let me know when the traffic makes you nuts. But anyway, Yeah, and so that's when you really have to pull out that why and remind yourself why this is important, why you decided to do this. And honestly, like, write it down and have it somewhere visible so that you can remind yourself whenever you need to.
Right. Put it on your phone. Somebody said take pictures on your phone in my group. But put it on your phone, make yourself a little banner and make it
Mhm.
your screensaver or whatever, the lock screen thing, whatever they call it,
Write it
technology.
write it on a Post-it note and stick it on your bathroom mirror. So when you wake up in the morning and you see that, and trust me, I am not a morning person, but if I wake up and I look in the mirror and I'm half asleep and I haven't had coffee yet and I see like those words of affirmation, that, hey, this is what's driving you, even though it doesn't feel like it right now, it helps. It really
Right.
does.
Right. You could put it, on your visor in your car, put it everywhere. Put it anywhere that you think you're going to be. Put it in a chicken coop. When you're
Your chickens are going to eat it, but you can stick it in your chicken coop.
Okay, put it on the outside of the chicken coop. Laminate it.
Don't put it anywhere near the goats.
No, don't put it anywhere near the goats. I'm just saying, you're going to want to remind yourself quite often when you're, especially trekking through mud or having to get up, in the middle of the morning because your goat is kidding or, whatever it may be. You're going to have to remind yourself quite often why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes, because animals do not give birth during daylight hours.
My rabbits did.
Oh, well,
So there is
actually,
that.
yeah, I guess my rabbits have been pretty good. I'm thinking more so like when I've had to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning because my pig is farrowing and all that happy stuff.
Right.
My
Definitely.
goats are usually like 10, 11 p.m., so it's not quite as bad, but it's still.
And like when if you have a milk animal and you have to go milk your cow at, when it's cold and you have to trek through snow to get there, you need to remind yourself why you're doing it.
You have to remind yourself why you live in Indiana and you have to trek through snow to do anything.
Because we need seasons in our life.
I have seasons.
Yeah,
I have
hot and
warm and
muggy.
warmer.
Hell's doorstep.
I almost needed long sleeves when I went out this morning.
I doubt it.
I mean, it was a little chilly. I would have needed to take them off as soon
What
as
was
I got
the temperature,
outside.
Bonnie?
It was probably 70.
It was like 31 today and it's a heat wave.
Florida has made me soft.
A little bit.
But my tomato seedlings look great. So there's that.
I've got onions and peppers. They're just inside.
Yeah, I have leeks coming up. Peppers are finally coming up. Still waiting. I have one eggplant that sprouted. And then I've got some like Egyptian spinach. No, you need the right kind of eggplant.
Okay.
Do not base your opinion of eggplant on the Black Beauty variety that you get from the grocery store. You need
I grew well, but it was the Black Beauty one, and it was.
You need
disgusting.
you need the Asian varieties. They're long and skinny, because or even like a lot of the Italian varieties. There's my sister-in-law who's from Turkey told me that the Black Beauties are really only made for stuffing, like doing stuffed eggplant. They're not meant to be grilled and eaten like we eat them. The ones that you want that get super tender when you saute them are the like skinny varieties. Just so you know.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, we're getting
sidetracked.
If you're new to the podcast, we go off topic fairly frequently. Okay. So all right, I guess we're still talking about why. Do you want to talk about mission statement at all, or
do you have a mission statement?
What's my mission statement? Don't lose your mind. No. I mean, really. So, okay. If we're talking about the difference between a why and a mission statement is really just taking your why and like condensing it down to one powerful sentence. So, and I mean, and this is why you'll see a lot of businesses that will probably have 2 or 3 mission statements. So obviously my primary one is to raise my children, knowing where their food supply comes from, and just knowing how to have control of their food supply. But then also, I have a kind of a mission statement of teaching the local community and getting them back in touch with agriculture and really helping them to take control of their food. So, we get a lot of people that are like, well, I want to eat a certain way, or I don't want to support the commercial meat industry because I don't, agree with the way the animals are raised, whatever. It's like, okay, well then, you have the ability, if you can't afford to buy the grass-fed organic yada yada yada, you have the ability to do that yourself. I
Right.
mean, a lot of people do. I realize not everyone does, but if you have the resources available to be able to do it yourself, here's how you can do it. And so just
Right.
helping to facilitate that.
Right. I guess, my mission kind of, I don't really have a statement. I probably should, but it's definitely to help my kids, know where their food comes from. I think that's incredibly important. I love when, my youngest daughter says, "Oh, did that come from the deer that you got, mommy?" Like that. I mean, it means a lot to me that she realizes that was an animal. It wasn't, it's not just some slab of meat that I bought in a styrofoam container from the grocery store. It was
Right.
she watched the whole process other than actually, shooting the deer, but, actually, butchering it and breaking it down into cuts of meat and all of those things. We try to make sure that our kids are a part of all of that, and a part of, they think that the little seedlings up on the shelf that I got is cool. And they'll help me plant them in the garden, and they know that all of that stuff is food. My dad made a joke last year. I had onions growing. He asked my daughter, he's like, "That grass looks really good." And she's like, "That's not grass, Grandpa. That's food." So, that's definitely a big part of my why. And then the rest
Yeah.
of it was probably lumped more into my business of, helping other people realize that you don't have to have tons and tons of acreage and knowledge and money and time and all those things to homestead. Really has nothing to do with any of those things. It's more of a mindset and a lifestyle choice. And there are ways to do it right where you're at.
Right. And honestly, there's so many resources available nowadays to be able to automate, simplify, and really make this way of living accessible for more people than it
Right.
was, when we were kids. Because back when we were kids, then based off the knowledge we had at the time, yes, you probably needed to have a lot of acreage to be able to do it. But with, hydroponics and tower growing becoming more popular, and a lot more people learning about raising quail and rabbits and things like that, there's a lot more ways to do it on a smaller acreage.
Right.
I had a point.
I'm sorry.
I know.
You're good at this.
I am excellent at thinking of things and then forgetting them instantaneously.
So the point is that Bonnie's trying to make. Oh, I think, like I said, I don't have an actual mission statement. I know some people are really fancy with, our mission is, and they have this big, huge, written out mission statement. I don't have all that, but, it does link back into your why. So as long as you have that why, and you have a place that you've written it down, at least one place, at least one, so that you can remind yourself while you're trudging through the snow, because you live in Indiana and not Florida. But if you have a way to remind yourself, I think, creating mission statements is great, and knowing, what your purpose is supposed to be and what you're trying to fulfill. But also it just links into your why. If you know why you're doing it, then, that's the big part of the battle.
Right. Now, in terms of getting started, like I know we've got, actually, I want to bring Tara's comment up here. Hi, Tara. I hope you're still on. She is moving to her homestead this evening. Is that, am I
Yeah,
reading that right?
I actually know Tara. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they bought land right before the pandemic. So it didn't work out real well after the pandemic started. So, they have been planning to move onto their homestead for a while. Like that's exciting, Tara. It really is.
That's a lot of, I hate moving. Like,
Yeah.
if I never have to move, I will be perfectly happy.
Yeah, so they're building their homestead. I hope I'm not giving away too much information, Tara, but they've been planning this for a while. So that's
That's cool.
exciting that they finally get to go
And
move
they're
on
gonna
to
get
their
their,
homestead.
yeah. So, but reason I want to bring hers up is she mentions the first goal is getting the garden going this year. And that's important, I think, because we want to really like make sure that we're starting small. Do we want to skip to our next?
Yeah,
Here we,
I
yeah,
got
there
it.
we go. You got it. Okay, cool.
I got it.
Um, and not trying to take on too much, especially the first year, because a lot of times, and I just remembered the point that I was going to make earlier, but that's okay. We've passed it now. ADD. All right. So, but you know, a lot of times, especially that first year on your homestead, you're going to spend so much time just learning your land.
Right.
Um, you know, and especially talking about gardening, and really this can apply to animals too. You have a microclimate within your property, and you may even have multiple microclimates within your property. So you may, you know, your plan may be that you're going to put your garden over here and chickens over here or whatever, and you think you have it all laid out, but then once you actually start executing it, you realize like the plants hate growing over there, or there's something about the soil over there that nothing thrives.
Right.
And or you know, maybe it's there's too much wind, there's too much sun, there's, you know, whatever it is. And
Right.
so um you know, spending that first year just getting acclimated to all of the different moving parts, and then just learning one skill and getting really good at that skill, I think is really the key to avoiding burnout on your homestead.
Right. And making sure that you keep everything small and manageable instead of, jumping in with both feet and trying to do all the things the first year. And things like you said, keeping an eye on your property that first year, sun mapping so that where the sun hits best on your property, when it hits, that type of thing, so you know where to put your gardens or what plants to put in what beds or anything like that. I think those things are important. I did mention, because someone asked about it earlier, I do think that getting any fruit bearing trees and shrubs in, as within the first year or so, should be a goal, if that is a goal of yours, if you want to grow some of your own fruit or all of your own fruit, because it takes so long for them to produce. I really wish that we had started sooner. Like, we have elderberry now, but this will be the first year that it might produce a little bit. And,
Mm-hmm.
We've been here for 6 years, so it would have been nice. We would already have established that, but I just planted them a few years ago. So I think if you're going to, if you want a goal for planting, I definitely think that that is a goal to have. Now, of course, you still have to kind of map out your property, know where water sets and, all of those things. Like, we have a lot of areas on our property that unfortunately have standing water in them after it snows and all of those things. So I'm glad that we didn't, try to plant things there, and, knowing where,
Elderberry loves wet.
right. Well, where it is does fine. But
Yeah.
like I said, we didn't plant it until after the
Right.
fact. So we already knew, where the water was standing when we had a big snow and it started to melt, or we had heavy rains. We know where our septic field is. We know where our well is and how, where all these things run, because all that stuff's important. So if you don't know where those things are, then that should definitely be at the top of your, priority list.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then,
for us, we were 10 years in before we actually started planting any fruit trees. And I definitely agree that we should have started sooner. Our biggest holdback, that's not really the word I'm looking for, but I don't even think that's a word, but anyway, is, trees are expensive. And
Mhm.
so it was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I don't really have the money in the budget, or I can't do it right, so I don't want to do it at all. And it's the wrong mindset to have. And once I started really exploring local nurseries and seeing what was available around me, I found a lot of places that have pretty affordable fruit trees, especially if you can buy them small. I mean, we're talking 10, 15, $20 for a tree that once it gets established is going to provide, that much and more fruit for you every year. And so even if we had just bought one or two trees a year, it would have built up over time and it would have accumulated. Because I think the biggest thing, a garden is a lot of work.
Right.
If you're just relying on annuals, you've got to start those seeds every year, get the seedlings transplanted. You've got to monitor them because they're really just baby plants. And so they're going to be, very susceptible to pests and disease. And you have to really monitor that closely because it can get out of control very quickly. Whereas perennials, once you have them established, aside from like maybe spraying for worms or whatever, they're pretty much immune to most things. And they're going to be a lot less labor intensive for you over the long term, but they're going to be that steady food source for you.
Right. And as far as starting your garden, like a couple raised beds your first year, I think, or a couple of, large containers or a few large containers, I think those are achievable goals that probably aren't going to overwhelm most people. And by using raised beds or containers, you get to choose the soil that goes in it. So you're not going to have to worry about, well, we have, like here, we have crappy clay soil. So, it boosts your confidence because you're more likely to be successful because you're not going to get overwhelmed because you don't have too much at once, and you're not trying to figure out, your soil health and all of those different things all at one time. So starting small and finding sources for those things that you can't start small with, I think is an achievable first year goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of people will look at raised beds and think, oh, it's way too expensive. But they're thinking of if they were producing all of the food for their family and, how many raised beds they would need to get. And you can certainly add like a couple raised beds every year and it'll help you to budget out.
Right.
But if there's nothing saying you can't, put in a couple raised beds. And even if you're just building it out of pine will at least last a couple years. Maybe not if you're in Florida, but my raised beds are built out of cypress, because it is more pest and disease resistant and like less likely to rot. But anyway, um, okay, so using Florida as an example, most of Florida is crappy sandy soil. There is no organic matter in it. So even if you're fertilizing, it runs straight through. And so you need to feed that soil and build it up. The problem is, like, I really like culture and using like the back to Eden gardening method and things like that, where you're layering like the compost and the wood chips and you're building that soil up year after year so that it continues to enrich it and feed it. But when you're first getting started, you're looking at like 2 years before it's really getting productive. You can
Right.
still grow in it that first year, but it's not going to be as productive as 2 years down the road when all the nutrients have started to balance out, all those microorganisms are really in the soil, you've got all the earthworms, like everything's starting to come together. You're really looking at 2 years. So in those 2 years, you can have a couple of raised beds or, I like grow bags, or you can do different containers, whatever, grow in that for the interim. And then you can, a couple years down the road, you can start planting in the soil. I will
Right.
say,
And you can repurpose like wood off your property or wood that
Mhm.
somebody's getting rid of and just build, out of branches and stuff. They don't have to be like super
yeah, it
nice,
doesn't have to be
fancy.
fancy.
And you don't have to fill the whole thing with soil. Like
Don't fill the whole thing with soil.
you can use other things and then just put your soil on top of it. You don't want to fill the whole thing with soil. You can use, the soil will break down
we
branches and
did.
things like that over the
Yeah,
years.
we did like a modified culture. So we have, I mean, we live in the woods, so we always have branches and logs and things like that. So we filled it probably like 3/4 of the way full because our raised beds are about 12 inches high, and then put like the compost and soil and stuff on top of that.
Right.
And yeah, it breaks down. As it breaks down, it does tend to settle. So we end up needing to top it off every year. Plus, I'll put more wood chips and leaves and stuff on top. But yeah, if you're trying to just fill it with soil, especially if you're needing to buy soil, that's where it's really gonna get expensive. Soil is almost always gonna be your biggest expense.
It's worth the expense, but not to fill the whole bed.
I don't
Not to fill the whole bed.
Not to fill the whole bed. No, this is like driving me nuts is I'm not seeing, like, I can't scroll all the way down to the bottom of the comments. So Kimber actually made a comment that her cows like to calve in the freezing snow.
Oh.
And of course, this comment was 20 minutes ago.
Oh, of course it was. And yes, she also did say pallets work well to build raised gardens. Yes.
Oh, you can see comments. Oh,
I can.
It's on your page, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know where they're coming from. It doesn't say. It just says.
I don't know where they're coming from.
Well, you're not on Facebook, though. It's live in my group and on my page. So I guess it is coming from me. Moving on.
Okay, so this is new technology for us, and we're a little bit, like, fascinated.
By all the fun things that we can do. By all
the fun buttons, yes. Anyway, okay, so yes. I think that's good on the gardening. But even if a garden is not your first year goal, start small. You like with the food supply being so funky the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's the word for it, right? I keep seeing all these people that are like, "Oh, I'm going to get like 200 meat birds or, 500 laying hens, whatever, and I'm going to turn this into a business." But they've never raised meat birds or they've never done anything on that scale before.
Right.
So don't do that.
You're just going to get burnt out and you're going to be like,
right.
You know what?
Hey, you know what? Like raising those, I mean, even if it's 50 meat birds, raising the 50 meat birds is not the problem. It's when all of the meat birds need to be processed this weekend. And you are I have not done 50.
Okay.
But this is story time. All of our meat birds needed processed. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. We'll process them, we'll sell them, whatever, right? I don't have refrigerator space for more than like 4 chickens. So, and freezer space is iffy. It's getting better. We've been like going through the freezer and trying to eat all the old stuff. But, I don't have anywhere to put all these chickens once we process them. So I went to a friend's house to process because she's got like the scalder and the plucker and all the fancy stuff. And I had someone who wanted to get 5 birds. I was literally dropping the 5 birds off at her house on the way home from my other friend's house. Because I wouldn't have had room for the 5 birds once I got back home.
Right.
Or they had to go straight in the freezer. And I still have meat birds running around my property a year later because I ran out of freezer space to process any more of them. So things to keep in mind.
Yeah. And another thing, a little side note, I hope that your why is not so you can make or save a lot of money, because that's probably not going to be the reality.
Yeah. It's not to say that you can't make money.
Oh yeah, definitely you can.
But it's going to be a learning process and you're going to lose money before you make money. And especially if you're getting large livestock involved, one emergency vet call can totally screw up your budget for the entire year.
Just throw them your wallet. If you're going to buy
Yeah.
large livestock, just throw your wallet away.
So, yeah, you got to keep that in mind. And you need to have that set aside ahead of time. Not yeah.
Right.
As I had 2 horses go down within a month of each other. Good times. So anyway, we're at about our halfway point. So do we want to get into the goals?
Yeah, setting goals.
The SMART acronym.
Yeah.
We might actually have to up there. Scale down what we were talking about. There we go.
There we go. So when we're talking about setting goals, you should always set goals for anything, really. I mean, everybody should have goals in life, but when you're talking specifically about homesteading, it makes specific homesteading goals. It helps you stay motivated, I think, and see your purpose in the long term. Like, okay, this is a goal, and seeing it come to fruition is, it makes you feel good. It's a confidence booster. So, but when you make your goals, I always recommend making a 1-year goal. You can make a 5-year goal and a 10-year goal that, are going to definitely probably change over the years, and you can go back and modify them every year. But your 1-year goals, don't ever make more than 3. And I think you should start at what your end goal is for the end of the year, and then work backwards and go back to 6 months at first, and then work back in monthly increments from that 6-month point. Like, okay, in 6 months, I need to be at this point if I want to be at that point by the end of the year, and then work back each month and have actionable steps that you need to take each month. And then you can even break it down even further and say, okay, well, this month I need to accomplish this. So this week I need to accomplish this. And when you're making your goals, you should use the SMART acronym, which we are going to talk about. Means specific. All goals should be specific, measurable, achievable. What's the other one?
Relevant,
and time bound. Sorry, guys.
Well, and I also think this helps us stay focused, because if you just have an open-ended goal, then you're going to find a lot of time pass without you actually accomplishing anything. And that's also when you're going to see yourself take on a lot of things that are not relevant. And you end up kind of all over the place.
Right.
And believe me, I say this from experience.
Oh, yeah, me too. As I work on things at the 11th hour. Anyway.
That's how I always operate. What are you talking about?
So one of my examples that I shared in my group earlier was I want to produce or not really produce, but have all of our protein on our homestead or from a local source. No protein from the grocery store is my end goal for the year. So then I work back to 6 months. Like, where do I need to be in 6 months? And then I work back to each month. Okay, well, this month I need to make sure I breed rabbits. And this month I need to make sure that I'm butchering chickens or buying chicks or hatching chicks or whatever it may be. And you just work through that goal one step at a time. And in October, I need to make sure that I'm out hunting. And I can work back and say, okay, well, I need to scout before I go hunt. And I need to practice before I go scout, and all of these different things. And so you end up with monthly and weekly goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for us, mine's probably still too vague, but one big thing for me is I want us to get back to showing and breeding our rabbits and our chickens. And of course, I say this in the middle of a AI outbreak, but whatever. I mean, and ironically, the thing that has kept us from showing rabbits the last few years has been that respiratory disease that's been going around. It's like,
well, you can't wait forever.
Right. And so right now we're working on getting the breeding stock built back up and acquiring new breeding stock from other breeders. And then I need to actually plan out when shows are, which the shows can help me determine my breeding schedule and and then making sure everyone stays groomed and in good
Right.
condition and all that. Your kids are just at their limit, aren't they?
They are. It's been a long, long day. Yeah, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to let this one in. So you keep talking. I'll be right back.
All right. She puts me in charge, and I'm like, she was the one who had the plan today. All right. So, tell you what, let me switch. All right. So if we talk about specific goals, I'll wait until Danielle comes back before I put her back on the screen. Oh, now she comes back. Are you back now? I was just switching you off. Uh-oh, I don't hear you. There we go.
I muted my mic. Sorry.
Oh, well, that makes sense. No, all right. So if we're talking about having something that's specific, so the big thing with that is like not, for instance, an open-ended goal would be like, we're going to be debt free, and we're going to pay off all of our debt. Well,
Right.
that's too broad. So it needs to be, okay, is it going to be a matter of saving or earning X amount of dollars? What is that X amount of dollars? Like, do you need to save or earn 5,000 or 50,000?
Right.
And what's the time frame and that you're going to, well, actually, I guess this kind of gets into the time bound. But yeah, if we're just talking about specific, like get into specific details as much as possible. I mean, even if it's like, okay, we want to have this many chickens in the freezer by October or whatever it is.
Right. Or we want, to be able to hatch our own chicks by, and, then you can get into what breed you want to hatch and, when do you need to get the chicks and to make sure that they're old enough to lay so that they can breed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like the financial thing, I think you need to get really specific. You said that it was too broad to say you want to be debt free. I think you need to say, okay, I want to pay off a certain thing by the end of the year. Instead of saying I want to be debt free by the end of the year, which would be great, but make it okay, well, or by the end of the month or the end of 6 months or whatever it is in order to achieve that longer term goal. Like,
right.
I think it needs to be more specific, like I want to get all my credit cards paid off by the end of the year. Or I want to pay my car off by the end of the year. Or I want to pay my mortgage off by the end of the year, and work backwards from that goal instead of just saying, I want to be debt free.
Right. And like I said, and having a specific dollar amount, because then that's going to go down into how much do you need to be setting aside every month? How much are you setting aside every week, every day, however you're doing that.
Right. And then it needs to be measurable. I clicked measurable on, I think.
Yes, you did.
Okay. So.
All right. So, well, again, this is going to kind of go into like that number. So is it, how many, if say your goal is, I don't want to have to buy eggs from the grocery store anymore. Okay. Well, how many eggs does your family eat a week? And then that means how many eggs do your birds need to be laying? And then even break that down further. Okay. Well, in order to get that many eggs a day, for instance, how many laying hens do I need to have?
Right.
And going into it, know that even if you have 4 hens doesn't mean you're getting 4 eggs every day.
You're not getting 4 eggs every day.
No.
You're not.
And then you're going to have those days where you get 5 eggs and you're like, what the?
Yeah. Where did this come from?
So yeah, so figuring that out and I mean, I realize there's going to be some things where you can't get super granular, but break it down as much as you can so that you really have numbers that you can, strive towards.
And if you're talking about chickens and having enough eggs, realize that part of the year they're not necessarily going to be laying very well. So you might want a plan for how to preserve those eggs by water glassing or, something else, or you're just going to eat seasonally and not eat eggs while their hens aren't laying very well or whatever it may be. But, include that in your goal.
And, young hens are going to lay further into the season and start laying sooner in the season. So, you may want to have a plan for, like, I know I have one friend of mine who she has like basically a zero sum policy where when it comes to her laying flock, she's going to completely retire all of those hens. And she usually will sell them off to people who don't necessarily want a ton of eggs, and don't mind having older hens. And she will start over with new chicks every season.
Right.
She'll have
a lot
some
of people do
overlap
that.
there. Yeah.
Or they'll start some in the fall so that they have some layers, first thing in the spring, and start some in the spring, and then they overlap each other where they're never really completely out of eggs.
Right. So those are things to keep in mind too. If we're going back to like using the gardening example, figuring out, okay, and this is where like there's the charts that tell you how much to plant for each person in your family. So this is where those come in really handy. Like if your plan or if your goal is to produce all of the broccoli your family's going to eat for the year. Because honestly, saying you're going to like produce all of the vegetables your family's going to eat is a little too broad, but
Yeah.
it's possible. You can get there. You just probably aren't going to get there your first year. But figuring out like how many broccoli plants do you actually need to sustain your family? And then of course, and look at it when you're looking at vegetables, you really need to look at how much you would need for an entire year, because then you're going to have to plan for either freezing or canning or, some type of preserving to get you through those off months.
I do have a blog post on that. We can link it somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. If you can grab the link really fast, we could actually put it up on the video.
Okay. You can go on to the next step. I'll find it.
I can go on to the next thing. All right. So we've kind of hinted at this. It's looking at goals and actions that are achievable. Like I said, if it's your first garden and you're just getting started and you're trying to set your goal to be that you're going to produce all the vegetables your family's going to eat for the entire year, that's probably not going to be an achievable goal for you that first year. And this is also why we recommend starting small, because it's going to be a lot easier to bounce back from failures and even adjust, midstream if something is going wrong, if you're on a smaller scale and you're just figuring things out. So that's a big part of keeping things achievable, is really keeping realistic expectations of what you will be able to accomplish within that year, within that time frame that you've set for yourself. It's great to think that we're going to like make a ton of money or have a ton of time, or, all of a sudden we're going to be a much more productive and disciplined person than we've ever been our entire lives. But the reality is it doesn't usually work out that way.
Right.
So set a smaller goal. And then if you overachieve, then that's a pat on the back and a reason to celebrate.
Right.
You had a great year. But don't beat yourself up when you've set that goal, that you set that bar too high, and then you're unable to meet that expectation that you set for yourself.
Right. Doesn't mean that you should, set it so low that, your 5-year-old can do it. But at the same time, you don't want to make it so unachievable that, because then you're just going to be disappointed, and it's going to hurt your confidence, and then you're not going to want to do it. So
yeah,
it's better to just make it.
Yeah. And I do like to set a stretch goal, like just one stretch goal for myself. I'm not going to I'm not going to make every single one of my goals a stretch goal, because I will make myself insane. But just like something that's just enough to push you out of your comfort zone. Because that's really where you're going to grow and you're going to like develop into a stronger person overall. But like at the same time, make it realistic. Like I am not going to like be competing with Elon Musk for the world's richest person this year. Like I would love to. Probably not going to happen. I mean, my 11-year-old has a, stretch goal that he's going to own a Tesla. One, he's 5 years from the possibility of driving. And two, he has no income aside from his allowance. So probably not an achievable goal.
Well, maybe, like a 10 or 15-year goal. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll go with that.
All right.
Oh, hey. Oh, you put it in the comments. Okay.
Where was I supposed to put it?
In the banners.
Oh.
All right. There's the link to determine how much to plant per person.
Can I click on that? Or is it just there?
No, they're not they're not clickable.
We'll see that they can click on the comment.
They can click on the comment if they're on Facebook. Yes. So. Is that on your page or on your group? Oh,
it's only on my page and it's on your YouTube.
Oh yeah, it should pop up as a
but it's not in the group because we can't comment into the group.
Okay.
And then where are we?
New technology. We're figuring this out.
Where were we at?
We were talking about achievable.
Relevant.
Relevant, yes.
Okay. So we need to make our goals relevant to whatever we're making goals for. You don't want to make a goal to drive a Tesla for your homestead. Well, maybe you do, but
maybe
it's not really relevant to homesteading.
I would rather have like a mule or a gator to help drive stuff around the farm, but
I'm picturing an alligator. I know what you're talking about now, but
I know I started to say mule and I'm like, someone is going to think I mean the equine, but no, that's not what I mean. And I need an all-terrain vehicle.
There you go. That's a little more
that can help speed up
specific.
No, and I think going back to your why is a good one for this. I mean, and obviously your goal as well, but I think it will help keep you motivated. Well, I guess this is about setting your goal. Anyway, here I am going off topic again. But looking at your why, I need more coffee. My coffee's empty. Looking at your why and really like looking at what your motivation is for doing this, because that is what's going to keep you like striving towards your goal.
Right.
Because if it's not relevant to your why and in your mission statement, then you're going to crap out. You're going to go, you know what? Never mind. I set the bar too high. I don't want to accomplish this goal anymore. And you're going to quit and you're not going to actually, achieve your goal.
Right. So if you're, if your why is food security, then, make that your goal relevant to attaining that food security, however it may be.
And it's not to mean that you're not going to add missions or change your missions as you go along.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mentioned that earlier, how, it's changed. I mean, it hasn't really changed. It just got added to because food security and knowing, how to do stuff has become incredibly important in the last couple of years. So,
I mean, you get your routines down and like getting your garden in the ground and keeping your garden productive becomes kind of a no-brainer for you. Then you can switch, to something else that's going to, again, stretch your knowledge and your talents and your abilities that much further.
Right. And you can make your goals specific to, if one of your long-term, year-long or whatever 5-year goals is to, have a great garden, then, you can set specific goals based off of your desire to have a big, huge, productive garden.
Right. All right. Want to jump to our next one now?
Yeah. There you go. Your next, your goal needs to be time bound. Yeah. You need to have a time on it or you're going to procrastinate and not butcher your meat chickens and come up with the excuse of no freezer space. I'm just kidding. I'm just picking on you.
Did you know that if you can keep your meat chickens alive long enough, they lay eggs? if you've got pullets. Anyway.
Well, that's good. I'm glad the roosters don't lay eggs.
I had a meat hen that actually not only laid eggs but hatched an egg and like raised a chick. So,
but yours are like they're Cornish cross, but they're just Cornishes
mine
with the
are
white rocks.
No, well, they were selectively bred to be pastured poultry. So they're hardier and don't have like the issues that a lot of like the hatchery Cornish crosses have.
Okay. But they don't breed them themselves.
I mean, they were able to breed themselves. No, they didn't breed true. The chick ended up turning it. She looks more like a white rock.
No, I mean the place you bought them from. Do they?
Oh,
do they create the cross? Is what I'm asking.
They create the cross. Like they have their own. Now, I don't know that they're necessarily crossing pure white rocks to pure white Cornish or whatever. Yeah. But they've whatever their bloodlines are that they're crossing, like they keep the breeding flocks and then they cross them for the pastured poultry.
Okay. So
yeah.
Back to time bound.
So everyone that has smack to talk about Cornish crosses, it really is about the breeding program. There are decent Cornish cross breeders out there. And I'm afraid to put their information out because they're in Georgia and I'm worried they're in the middle of this whole AI lockdown and I don't even know if they can sell. I need to call them because I want to order chicks.
I shared them in my challenge group a couple days ago. Somebody was asking and I mentioned that you had raised some from them.
Here, tell you what, I will be nice. Okay. They are called Bob's Biddies because I really do like to support them. It is like the whole hatchery is run by, that is obviously not the website. The whole
I'm glad you're not screen sharing.
I know. The whole here we go. The whole hatchery is just run by this older couple. I mean, they work their tails off, but they have a really great breeding program.
Well, we might have our own breeding program since my husband bought Cornish. But
there you go. Okay, so all right, I shared the link. Okay. Oh, you know what though? I think it only shared to YouTube. I don't know that it shared to your.
No, it's on there.
It is on there. Okay, cool.
It's just not shared to my group, and I can add those 2 links when we get done here.
Okay. Tell you what, I can throw it up on a banner. So, because we're on time bound now.
Yep.
All right. So there is the website for Bob's Biddies. And they do laying hens as well. And they even have some purebreds that they raise. But I mainly use them for the Cornish crosses. Okay. Real nice people.
So as far as time bound, like we said, it needs to have a time limit on it or you're going to procrastinate. So, take that year-end goal and then make a 6-month goal off of that and then do monthly goals and then, prioritize your weekly goals off of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say, like, especially when it comes to gardening, having those time-bound goals and sticking to them are so important because such a large part of gardening is timing. So, if like you look at your last average frost date and you look at how long it's going to take for those seedlings to grow, you need to count backwards to figure out when you're going to start those seeds. And then also, especially if you live in a place that has very short seasons, like if you're really far north, you need to look at what your average last frost date is and look at varieties that are going to be mature and that you're going to be able to harvest off of before that average last frost date.
First.
No, last. Because they don't want
last, and then you're going to have your first frost date and you only have that window to plant in.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm Florida and Florida's backwards. Okay.
Your average first
is in the
frost date.
fall. Average
Yeah.
last is in the spring.
Yes.
So
You only have that window of time,
reverse
so you need to make sure that those varieties can grow in that time
Yeah.
period, and realize that the time to maturity is once the plant is outside. It is not once you put the
Right.
seed
It
in your little seed
starts
starting
when
tray.
you transplant.
Right.
Now, if you are in Florida, we don't, well, I guess it kind of depends on what part of Florida you're in. For Central Florida, we don't really have one long grow season.
Wow. I thought you turned the
I did. Hang on. Welcome to live streaming, folks.
It's wonderful.
It's time for my 4-year-old to sit on the potty. Okay. I totally. Oh, so if you try to do long season vegetables, you need to start them in the fall, but you're going to have to provide frost protection because more than likely we're going to get some freezes in there midwinter. Like our freezes and frosts are usually like January, February timeframe. Otherwise, we plan for 2 short seasons. So most of the vegetables we plant, we try to go for like a 90 to 120 day maturity. We cannot grow russet potatoes here because we don't have a long enough season for them. So like when it comes to potatoes, we're usually doing Yukon Golds, Redskins, the new potatoes because they don't need as long of a maturity time. The downside to that is they also don't have as long of a storage life. You have to kind of eat them fairly quickly.
Somebody said, all new to me. I came from San Diego, California. I don't know who said it. I'm assuming she's talking about gardening with seasons, the frost dates and stuff like that.
Yes. San Diego doesn't have frost dates.
Right, exactly. So
they're kind of on the same plane as Florida.
Right. So talking about that, when you look at the back of your seed packet, you can see number one, it kind of has like what am I wanting to say here? I don't have a seed packet in front of me.
Honestly, I will tell you right now for Florida, and this probably goes for a lot of like zones 9 and 10. We can't go by the seed packets. They're totally off for what we actually
but
have to do.
I think this is a person that has moved out of there and has moved into.
Is this the girl that moved?
I think so, but it's from my
Kentucky?
group, I think. So it just shows up as Facebook user, and I'm not entirely sure. But
yeah, so for the future, guys, please make sure you actually go to that link, which I think we.
Yeah, it's the one that's
there.
The one that's in Kentucky now.
Okay.
So when you're looking at the back of your seed packet, since you're not used to that, it'll have like usually like when to start it indoors, like how many weeks prior, and if it's cold hardy or not. And so you're going to have to look at what your average last frost date is, which is going to be a website that Bonnie's going to find for me.
Oh, okay.
You'll be able to
wasn't
type
what
in
I was doing. All right. Well, hang on. I'm going to do something else really fast while I look up that. But I know where to find that.
But you can type in your zip code, and it will tell you. Yeah, where was I going with this? Oh, it will tell you when your average last frost date is and when your average first frost date is. And then you're going to take those 2 dates, and it'll help you figure out how long your growing season is. And then as far as starting seeds, the ones that need started indoors, usually on the back of the seed packet, it'll say, start indoors, 8 weeks before average or last frost date. And you just count backwards from that date. I recommend going about a week out from what the internet says is your average last frost date for anything like tomatoes and peppers, anything that's not cold hardy. So your seed packet
rule of
should
thumb
tell
is
you
even
if
to
it's
go
cold hardy
14 days. Yeah.
Right.
Another thing you can do is you should have a local extension office, agricultural extension, that will usually have classes that can help you understand local growing conditions and kind of what the best practices are for your area. Just real quick. So I put this link up, the StreamYard.com/Facebook. That is to If you're in the Facebook group, that is to authorize StreamYard to be able to show us who is commenting, so that we can actually see who you are. And then the other one we're talking about is, this is the link to find out your frost date based on your zip code. So it's on the Farmer's Almanac website, almanac.com/gardening/frost dates.
My kids are screaming.
I noticed.
The beauty of live streaming. The
The
smallest
beauty
is
of
arguing with the
working
biggest.
from home.
Right,
Isn't that
that
the way it
too.
usually
And
is?
homeschooling.
Yay.
But you can type in and find your frost date for your local area. Another suggestion is to go to your local nursery, not like your Lowe's or any, no big box stores, like an actual local nursery. And usually, number one, our local nurseries, I think almost all of them will post what the average last frost date is, because they don't want people to buy plants from them, go put them in the ground, and then come back and say, my plant died.
And then it's the nursery's fault. Yeah.
Right. So they do that. And they're also, you're going to have people that grow in your climate, not necessarily in your soil. Some of them do, some of them don't, but they grow in your climate, and they've usually been doing it a while, and they're obviously fairly good at what they do, or they wouldn't have a nursery. And a lot of times you can find employees that can help you, understand your growing season, how long you have, even varieties that grow better in your area versus, you can buy seeds that don't necessarily grow well in your area.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find a nursery, usually they're going to have stuff that grows well in your area. If you go to Lowe's and buy their plants from Bonnie's or whatever, doesn't necessarily do as well in your area.
Different Bonnie.
Not you. Yeah. I mean Bonnie's plants, not your plants.
I had someone ask me if I was the same Bonnie from Bonnie's, and I'm like, no, I wish. I'm not making nearly that much money.
Right.
Okay. And I will say that's a really good reason also to support your local nurseries, because they're going to be a lot more knowledgeable about the best varieties, the best times, all of those things. You go to the big box stores, a lot of times the guy, the person they have running the register is just a random person that was running the register inside the store the day before. Like, they really don't know that much about gardening. And like, I know with Florida, the big box stores are notorious for selling varieties that do not grow here. So it's a really good idea to, get with your local gardening groups, or talk to your local nurseries, and help them point you in the right direction.
Right.
And if you happen to be near Brooksville, Florida, you can check out kitchenbotanicals.com. I will be selling.
You can also order seeds from her.
Yes. Hang on. I will put the link up.
There you go.
It's almost like I know what I'm doing.
First time, guys. First time.
Okay,
we've not used this before. Is this even actually recording?
It's It better be recording. That's my website, guys. For seeds and supplies, I'm working on getting more stuff up on there. So,
are you going to be able to ship plants?
Yes, that's what I'm working on right now. Okay. I'm gonna. They're growing right now. I'm gonna start listing them on the website, so that if especially, I'm probably just going to be shipping like tomatoes and tomatoes, peppers, and maybe eggplants, if I get good germination with my eggplants. But for this year, I've got a ton of Egyptian spinach growing, so I might be shipping some Egyptian spinach too. And I'm going to get those on the website. I've already got all the approval stuff I need to actually be able to ship plants. There's just a few states I'm not allowed to ship to. So, because, California sucks, and as well as Arizona, and I don't know where else. So,
and another thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up and mention my challenge one more time is that when your first year gardening, even if you've gardened before, I highly recommend, so that you don't get overwhelmed, that you buy your seedlings from a local nursery, not the big box store. Don't buy from the big
Right.
box store. It's just going to help you not feel so overwhelmed, to make sure that you're going to get, the timing right for starting your seeds and all those things. And then after your first year, maybe next year, you can start a few seeds. But if you're in a completely new climate, then go buy your seeds from the nursery, just to save yourself that headache and the disappointment if it doesn't work out.
Now, there are a few things that are super easy to grow from seed.
Oh, yeah.
So like, carrots, do not even try to transplant carrots. They need to be started from seed. Although I
Right.
will tell you, carrots are not a great endeavor for first year gardeners. I have a hard time with carrots.
Ours are great because you put them in a raised bed. And so we
Yeah,
didn't have to them in the soil, and we get
I don't know if I
big
just don't
long
keep
carrots.
mine moist enough. But
It
even the
takes a
years
long
that
time
I've
for them
been
to
able,
germinate.
yeah, and even the times that I've been able to get them to grow, I end up with like huge tops and no root. So go figure. But
Well,
we
but
have
you're in
we have,
Florida,
we
so
have a
it's not
lot of
very cold.
nematodes. Right. There's certain, like New Carota is, let's see, New Carota is a good variety, and Scarlet Nantes is another one that I'm going to grow, and see if they do better. But yeah. What else? So anyway, but things that are going to grow really easily are going to be like lettuces, Swiss chard. If you like to eat kale, kale is good. If you don't like to eat kale, don't waste
Don't
the
plant
garden
kale.
space.
No.
I mean, it grows great. I can grow
Oh, yeah.
kale like nobody's business.
I think everybody
But
can.
I can only get my family to eat so much kale. So
Zucchini does really well.
I have a really hard time with zucchini.
Really?
We get
You're
a
like the
lot.
only person on the planet that I've ever heard say.
No, it's because we just have so many soil pests here. The bugs do not die in Florida. So it's like as soon as the plant starts to put out blooms, we've got boars, vine boars.
Oh. Okay.
So there's a lot of alternatives that grow really well that when you cook them, they cook a lot like zucchini, but they have a solid stem, so they're not as prone to the vine boars. Seminole pumpkin does really well, and if you harvest it green, you can cook it like a zucchini. A lot of people will eat loofah as a zucchini. So yeah, there's some different options, but zucchini itself, unfortunately, just has been one crappy harvest after another.
So, to wrap up, since we're over our time here.
Yeah, that's typical.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So tell us about the challenge, because I know we've got people here that are from your group, but we also have people that are not. So
I am running a challenge. It started today and it runs through Friday, which is March 4th, I think.
yes,
And it's called the Homestead Anywhere Challenge. And it's to help you try to, like today, we talked about goal setting, help you start your homestead or, keep it going without being overwhelmed, regardless of where you live. So you can join it by going to therusticelk.com/challenge and enter your information, and it will enter you into the challenge. And
why didn't we create a banner for that?
I don't know why we didn't create a banner for that, because it took me 20 minutes to make a new form. Anyway, if you haven't already joined the challenge, I invite you to come enjoy the challenge, and there's no cost for it or anything. I have no idea what I'm doing, so there is that. But I do have it all planned out to help you guys, build your homestead and set your goals and not get overwhelmed. Hopefully.
All right, I've got it. I put it in the comments as well as on the screen here. Okay. So yeah, and this is this episode is part of our Grounded in Simplicity podcast. The podcast episode is going to air tomorrow, which means I have some editing to do. But we actually we did pretty good with staying on topic and having not too many distractions.
I like this format better.
Yeah. So aside from, learning the technology, I think this is going to work out well. And then I will just have this on the podcast for the audio recording tomorrow. So if you have not already subscribed, go subscribe to the Grounded in Simplicity podcast on all major podcast channels, and that way you can get all of our episodes. And if you happen to be watching from YouTube, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Not So Modern Housewife. And
I
we have
should have linked mine. It'd
Patreon.
be my first video.
There's a way to kick it off.
All right. So,
All right.
and if you
Well,
guys have any questions, you know, you can still pop them in the comments, and we'll read them, and we can type out answers.
Yeah, but yes, thank you for everyone that joined us. I think we had well, we've got 8 watching now, and I think it's been pretty consistent for the whole time. So the fact that you guys listened to us for a whole hour, I'm kind of impressed.
But this is going to be an hour-long podcast episode, so.
Well,
and there go my kids. So
listening to it while you're driving versus just sitting here and watching your phone is a different story. But all right. Well, thank you so much for everybody. Are we going to go live again on Friday as part of your challenge?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
We can do that.
Now that we have everything set up and we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, all right. I will make sure I book the studio time. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will.
Somebody wants links for those, please.
Links for which?
What were we talking about?
Comments. Like the YouTube channel and the podcast. Wouldn't that be helpful? All right. Hang on.
Sorry, new technology, guys. What we can do, Grounded in Simplicity.
All right. I'm going to throw them up. Oh, the podcast. Yeah. I'm going to throw the links up in the comments.
Oh, I did that too, so they're gonna get it like 3 times.
Oh, well, to be helpful. But you already got Grounded in Simplicity.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it ended up there.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. And you got your YouTube, and then.
Yep, and we got So we're good, I think. Yep. All right. So yes, if you have not already joined Danielle's challenge, go follow the link and get signed up. She's got lots of good stuff planned this week to help you achieve your goals for your homestead this year. All right. So I think that's it.
All right.
And you guys have a great one.
Bye, guys.